that should be the attitude of every child of God, is that we come in line with that. We change our thinking to be like God's. That's what we should desire as we serve Him, as we walk in fellowship with Him. Amen. All right, now jumping back into this. Consider the miracle. We're looking at bird evolution, so-called. But consider the miracle that would be necessary for a dinosaur to evolve into a bird. It sounds ridiculous, and as we go through this, you're going to be like, how do they even perpetrate this? How can they, with like a good conscience, even push this along? But so many people believe it because we've been told, because if you go to the natural history museums, you'll see displays up of so-called, bird evolution from a dinosaur to a bird. Now, Darwinists focus on a few supposed reptilian characteristics of the Archaeopteryx while ignoring the vast number of fantastic modifications necessary to turn a reptile into a bird. A heavy earthbound body would have to evolve into a lightweight aerodynamic one. Okay, that's huge right there. Solid bones would have to evolve into hollow bones that are light but very strong. So the hollow bird bone on the left, and then a solid mammal bone on the right. If I remember next year, if I go bird hunting, I'm going to keep one of the bones. I threw them all away this year, but I'm going to keep one of them, and I'm going to cut it in half so we can look at it. Because we've all seen, mammal bones when we, prepare food. I guess we could look at a chicken bone as well. The scales would have to evolve into complex flight feathers, like just the impossibility of that right there. Scales evolving into flight feathers. It's just crazy, but we'll look more at the feather here in a second. Richard Dawkins says that feathers are modified reptilian scales. Any evidence for that? Absolutely not, but he says it. So there it is. Reptile scales are absolutely nothing like a bird's flying feathers. Consider the alligator. Just look at that picture. How's this thing going to end up in the air? And I know they're going to say, well, it wasn't like an alligator. You're still saying a dinosaur. I mean, look at these things. And by the way, I don't want to get off in dinosaurs, but let me just say this, that man and dinosaurs were on earth together. Okay? Man and dinosaurs were on earth together. If we don't believe that, it's because we've all been indoctrinated for so long to believe that they were millions of years before us. And that's why we would have that idea, which, I'm not knocking you if you felt that way or if you feel that way, because we've been told that our whole lives. So we have to just begin to learn, okay, how does all of this fit in with the Bible? And, man and dinosaurs have been on earth together. All right, well, this is what they would have looked like as far as we know. I mean, look at it. And people, let me say something else about this. Okay, so people say in the Bible, how come the word dinosaur isn't there? Because the word dinosaur was invented after the Bible was written, after the King James Bible was written, okay? And it really means big lizard. I mean, that's essentially what the word dinosaur means. Okay, so look at this thing. How is that going to fly? I mean, look at the scales on it. Here's up close. How are those turning into feathers? Do we really believe that? Do we see any transitional creatures, from this to a bird? No, you see birds and you see reptiles. And that's it. That's what you see. Feathers are complex structures with a barbules, and hooks that originate in a totally different way from follicles inside the skin in a manner akin to mammalian hair. So there's a close-up of a bird feather. A simple pigeon feather is composed of more than 1 million individual parts made up of billions of cells perfectly organized into a marvel of design, and they really are. Just one flying feather is a complex system with a hollow stem that starts out as a circle near the root of the feather and changes into a rectangular shape, which is structurally stronger. So as it comes off, the skin, it starts off round, and then as it goes farther into the feather, it becomes rectangular shape. And we'll see a closer depiction of that here in a second. Smaller shafts or barbs angle off the stem, forming the feather shape. This kind of helps you to see it. So the anatomy of a typical feather. So you see the quill, the shaft, and then the cutout section. And then you can see the barbules. Some of them have hooks, some of them don't. So 2 sets of barbules angle off the barbs. The barbules on one side of the barb have microscopic hooks that interlock with a set of non-hooked barbules off the side of the adjoining barb. Okay, so they hold themselves together. So the non-hooked barbules, the hooked barbules, how did evolution know it needed to do that on one side and not the other, and make them match so they hook, so they can, move air when they flap, because that's the design of it. It holds itself so it stays closed and can move air. So going back to this, how did it know it needed to go from this? Like, this is the absurdity of what they're telling us to all of this. How did it know that? With the barbules hooked, the wing has a lightweight, flat surface that the bird uses to push against the air. The creature would have to grow wings perfectly shaped for flight with all of the necessary muscles and tendons. So looking at all of that, just the feathers didn't take into account like the muscles and tendons that are needed, the strength that's needed to not walk, but to fly. And man, when you see something like that flying, you can hear their wings flapping. Like, they're big. You can like hear it moving the wind as they fly. A cold-blooded creature would have to evolve into a warm-blooded one. Like, where's that happening? Okay, where's that happening? So a warm-blooded creature is what we are, and we can regulate our body temperature through various means. A cold-blooded creature is dependent on basically the sun or the environment that they're in. If a cold-blooded creature is going to reach whatever temperature it is eventually. If it's cold, it'll start to go down to that. If it's warm, it'll start to go up to that. So considering the specificities and complexities of both metabolic systems, any type of half and half would be something out of a poorly done science fiction. So it's not going to work. And so think about this, even just this change right here. How's that going to happen? Is it just one day, like my kid's warm-blooded and I was cold-blooded? Like, is that how that's going to happen? Where does this happen? Where is this going to happen? See, they don't answer any of this. They just say it happened. Well, okay, where? Where do we see it transitioning? How did it transition? Why did it need to transition if it's doing just fine, eating food on the ground? Why all of a sudden does it need to fly now? Like, what's the benefit of it, right? Why would it need to do that? Right? Survival of the fittest. Okay. So if it was a half and half, it'd be something out of a poorly done science fiction. So bellows like lungs would have to evolve into the avian lungs. So their lungs are going to have to change. Why would it do that? Why would that need to happen? For what purpose does any of this need to take place? Reptile lungs work like bellows. The air is drawn in and the stale air is then breathed out the same way it came in. But birds have a complicated system of air sacs, even involving the hollow bones. This system keeps air flowing in one direction through tubes in the lung, and blood moves through the lungs' blood vessels in the opposite direction for efficient oxygen uptake. So they work completely different. Michael Denton, a PhD in biochemistry, said just how such a different respiratory system could have evolved gradually is fantastically difficult to envisage, especially bearing in mind that the maintenance of respiratory function is absolutely vital to the list of an organism, to the extent that the slightest malfunction leads to death within minutes. So it has to happen. How's it going to happen without there being some mistakes? Right? How's that going to happen? And then I've mentioned this before, but when we look at what do they call them when you find the bones? Why am I not? What are they called? Fossils. Thank you. When they find fossils, simple word, I couldn't remember it. But when we find fossils, like, you don't know anything about that fossil. Like, you don't even know if it had kids. Like, all you know is it's dead. That's all you know about it. But you don't know if it had kids. So how do you know if it was transitioning, its next generation was transitioning into something? We don't know that. Okay, so like things like this, if the lungs are going to change, it has to happen perfectly. Otherwise, it'll die. If we don't breathe, we'll die within minutes, right? So a 3-chambered heart, something else, would have to evolve into a 4-chambered heart. Like, when's that going to happen? Why is that going to happen? And what about these supposed mutations between? Like, how do they not just die because it didn't work out? A land-bound reptile brain would have to evolve into a bird brain capable of thriving in a completely different environment. Absolutely, it would. Like, that's just completely different. It's foreign to us. The dinosaur would have to evolve the ability to sing pretty songs. European nightingale. I'm trying to think, has anybody ever heard a reptile make a noise other than like their breathing? But just hissing, that's just breathing, right? I mean, I guess that's what birds do. It's breathing, it's air coming out, but we never really hear them make a noise, right? But birds do. So this would require the evolution of the songbird's amazing syrinx, the voice box. It enables it to produce independent sounds of two voices at once. Melodious warbler. Just the complexity of God's creation, the things he puts there for us. Birds can take many breaths that are so brief and so perfectly synchronized with their songs, they do not produce any discernible gaps. Some birds transpose songs from one key to another. Some birds sing duets, such as the butcher bird. Butcher bird duets. Isn't that crazy? Like they're just making a song together. It's amazing to me. Some birds engage in counter singing and antiphonal singing, with one bird singing part of a song and another bird singing another part. This requires knowledge of the duet by both partners and split-second timing in its execution. Barbets counter singing. Some birds even sing matched duetting in groups. 3 or more birds sing, males, then females, then males, and so on to produce what sounds like a single melody. A creature that lives in one place would have to evolve the ability to migrate long distances by air. This is some incredible stuff here. How far they travel. They mark a lot of the ducks that fly through New Mexico. I wish I kept the numbers in front of me. I don't have them. My buddy's big into duck hunting, and he kept all that. I was asking him about it, and he showed me some of it. And they'll tag some of the ducks that fly, as they come through here. And then what you can do is if you shoot one down, then you have that tag and you can look it up. There's a website you can go to and you can see, because it tracks it, the elevation, the distances, everything that it does, the time it took it to travel that far, all of that stuff. And you can look it up, and he's looked it up before. And I think it was his buddy got this one, and I'm rough on the numbers, so don't quote me exactly. But it was something like they would go up to I want to say I feel like it was 15,000 feet elevation down to, obviously all the way to the ground. And they traveled 1,200 miles in one go. I mean, it's just crazy. They'll just fly. He was telling me that some of them will go into a sleep while they're flying, because they just hit those jet currents because they're up so high, and they'll just be there and they'll just kind of fall asleep, and they can go for 24 hours. And they travel distances of 1,200 miles. That's just some of the ducks that fly through here that you see. When you see ducks flying, they've made distances like that. But we're going to look at some that fly even farther. The Arctic tern migrates more than 9,000 miles from the Arctic to the Antarctic. By the way, those ducks are doing that every year. That's their migration every year. The bar-tailed godwit flies 6,800 miles from Alaska to New Zealand nonstop in an 8-day journey. That's insane, nonstop, 6,800 miles. The golden plover migrates 3,000 miles. This is insane too, from Alaska to Hawaii, unerringly finding an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Even with maps, I don't think I could find Hawaii in the middle of the ocean, okay? I'm that's pretty impressive right there. The ruby-throated hummingbird flies nonstop. A hummingbird, 450 miles across the Gulf of Mexico in 20 hours, beating its tiny wings nearly 3 million times on that journey. That dude has got to lose some weight on that journey. I mean, they're tiny. The dinosaur would have to evolve beautiful coloring. This amazing reptile bird process would have to produce 24 different orders of birds, from eagles to woodpeckers to swans to penguins to hummingbirds. Look at that owl on the left. That guy just looks funny. He's just always surprised. All right, natural selection and mutations cannot explain any of these miraculous changes. And this is the method they say evolution took place. Okay, it can't explain any of it. The croco-bird theory. Some scientists believe that birds evolved from the Crocodilomorpha, or a type of terrestrial crocodile. So, remember that picture of the crocodile before. That's where birds came from. All right, the evidence Darwinism requires. A few questionable missing links do not prove evolution. Charles Darwin himself said that his theory requires the existence of countless intermediaries. So what he's saying is, in the fossil record, they'll be all over the place. We'll see this stuff everywhere once we start digging it up. It's going to be all over. If we are testing Darwinism rather than merely looking for a confirming example or two, then a single good candidate for ancestor status is not enough to save a theory that posits a worldwide history of continual evolutionary transformation. That was Philip Johnson, Darwin on Trial. So it's not enough if you just find one or two good candidates for ancestor status. So number 7, what if a dinosaur had feathers? The evidence, in quotes, that some dinosaurs had feathers is questionable. But what if some type of dinosaur did have feathers? Would that prove that birds evolved from dinosaurs? No. A duck has a duck bill and webbed feet, as does a platypus, but nobody believes that this proves that platypuses evolved from ducks. The New Answers book. A dinosaur-like fossil with feathers would just be another curious mosaic like the platypus, and part of the pattern of similarities placed in creatures to show the hand of the one true creator God who made everything. Number 8, mythical evolutionary art. Here's where they get people. It's with this stuff. It's where they get people. Without supporting evidence, so there's no evidence for this, mythical creations are presented as icons of evolution to an unsuspecting public. So there's no evidence for it. They just make this up. So what happens is we've taught generations of people to believe in something that doesn't exist, right? Okay, they have faith in it, even though there's no actual evidence for it. Okay, this is why I say, like, evolution is not science. It's a religion. Okay, it's a religion. All right, you might say, well, what proof does the Bible have? Well, we've looked at a ton of it. There's evidence all over the Bible. You look at prophecy, you look at archaeology, what it says about history, it's all accurate. All of it. It's all accurate. There is evidence. Real quick, go to Acts chapter 1. This was written by Luke. Acts chapter 1, verse 1, it says, the former treatise have I made, O Theophilus, of all that Jesus began both to do and teach. He's talking about the Gospel of Luke. Until the day in which he was taken up. After that, he, through the Holy Ghost, had given commandments unto the apostles whom he had chosen. Now get this in verse 3. To whom also he showed himself alive after his passion. Look at this. By many infallible proofs, being seen of them 40 days and speaking of things pertaining to the kingdom of God. So he showed himself alive by many infallible proofs. There's evidence. Okay, our faith isn't based on just hope. It's based on many infallible proofs. I hope so, or I want to believe this, or this is going to be my crutch, because a lot of people say, oh, religion's just a crutch. No, it's based on many infallible proofs. It's truth. 1 Corinthians 15. If you look at the first 6 verses, talk about 500 eyewitnesses at one time saw Jesus alive after his resurrection. 500 eyewitnesses, that's an infallible proof. Okay, that holds up in any court of law. There's 500 eyewitnesses to that. Okay, so this, though, without supporting evidence, mythical creations are presented as icons of evolution to an unsuspecting public. And we don't know any better. We're just trusting them, right? We go through school and they teach me, and I trust that it's science, right? So they said it's science. Trust the science. Follow the science. So I'm trusting the science. I'm following the science. And this is why people's faith in God is destroyed, because they're taught that God exists, that God is real. And then they start hearing this stuff and they say, wait a minute. If this is science and it's proven, because most of us just accept it as fact, then is God real? And we have again a yea hath God said. It's just like the devil. This is why you always see his fingerprints on things. Okay? Even some evolutionists have protested this. They disagree with this. Dr. Storselson, a Smithsonian Institute evolution. I think if you have a last name Storselson, you're pretty much pegged as you're going to be a scientist, right? Okay, I'm just kidding. Okay, a Smithsonian Institute evolution scientist has referred to the practice of adding features to dinosaurs as propaganda. This is an evolutionist now. He says it's propaganda, it's hype, it's wishful thinking, it's nonsense, it's spurious fantasia, and a hoax. Okay, an evolutionist said that. It's a hoax. Proavis. So there it is. Look at that. This drawing of Proavis appeared in The Origin of Birds in 1926 by Gerhard Heilmann. It has scales and feathers and is shown climbing a tree and gliding through the air. So there it is. Obviously, the one climbing the tree, the one gliding through the air is right there. Right? The artistry, right? Get a good artist, it's going to be believable. There is no fossil evidence for such a creature, but the book was very influential. Doesn't matter if it's true, we're going to make it and we're going to put it off as if it's truth. Bambaraptor. This was unveiled in 1995 from a fossil found in Montana. So there's a artist's rendering of it. Okay? It's from a fossil found in Montana. A reconstruction was made for the 2000 Florida Symposium on Dinosaur Bird Evolution. The bear skeleton was magically transformed into a bird-like dinosaur with bird-like eyes in bird-like orientation, bird-like leg muscles, even pretty bird feathers. So there it is. The Australia Museum in Sydney has an exhibit on bird evolution which features skeletons of Bambaraptor, Archaeopteryx, and the pheasant. So there you see Bambaraptor on the bottom, Archaeopteryx, and then the pheasant. The Bambaraptor is running, looking as if it's trying to get off the ground, while the Archaeopteryx is flying level, not far off the ground, perhaps a bit unsteadily as a newcomer to flight, with the pheasant soaring easily above its supposed predecessors. Bird evolution is a myth. Genesis 1:20, and God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that they may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven." So we need to look at something right here as we talk about this. Look, there is many infallible proofs within the Bible. There's lots of evidence there. But at some point, it does come down to a matter of faith. You have to choose what you're going to believe. In my eyes, there's an abundance of evidence for the Bible, but you're still going to have to choose that, okay, this is what God says. Then if anything from science comes out that opposes this, I automatically know it's false. I automatically know it's false. And then you've seen like all the lying that they've done, all the dishonesty that they've used to indoctrinate people with this, and you have to suspect that, okay, like mainstream science isn't always fact-based. It's not always fact-based. And so I have to question it when it opposes what God's word says. And God says that he made the flying fowl, okay, that they may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. That's just how he made them. Fowl that fly above the earth in the open firmament. He created them that way. They were created this way. Not any creature like this that's never even found any evidence for it. Okay, so we will stop right there.